Hi P7. I thought I would read you the rest of The Sleeping Sword because we were going to finish it, and I think it's a shame if we don't finish a book. So these videos are the last few chapters. Hopefully it won't take too long to read them to you. Okay, I'm going to start with chapter 10. So if you remember, Bun and his dad had just opened up that big hole in the field, and Bun fell down it, and there were lots of bones down there, or so he thought, but actually it wasn't bones, it was things like a shield and a sword. So we finally found the sword that this story's about. Okay, chapter 10. Isn't that magical? I wanted to go with him, but my mother wouldn't hear of it. She'd already lost one argument, and she certainly wasn't going to lose another. You've got your Braille homework for Mrs. Parsons, she said firmly. You keep saying you're going to do it, and you still haven't done it. What's the point in paying good money for those lessons if... And on and on and on. I gave in because I knew from her tone it was a hopeless cause. Went up to my room, but I couldn't concentrate on my homework at all. I was far too wound up. All I could think about was that sword. A sword from the time of King Arthur and Lancelot and Gawain and Tristram and Percival. We had discovered it, and I would soon be holding it. In the end, I abandoned my homework altogether and put on my Arthur tape. It was the part where King Arthur is in a boat out on the lake, and a silken arm comes up out of the water, offering him Excalibur, the magical sword that brought him his kingly power. The sword he would use all his life in his struggle for good against evil. I was still listening to the tape when I heard the tractor come rumbling back into the yard. My father was already in the kitchen by the time I got downstairs, and I could hear my mother spreading newspaper out on the table, complaining bitterly. I'm telling you, you shouldn't be doing this, she was saying. It's not right, and what's more, it's not hygienic either. Suddenly she stopped talking. I heard a sharp intake of breath. And the silence. Oh my God, it's beautiful. Here, Bun, come and touch it. She took my hand and guided it. Can you feel it? She whispered. Can you feel it? It's incredible, incredible. Can you feel it? Isn't that magical? I ran my hands the length of the sword from the hilt to the point. Do you remember we said the hilt is the bit that you hold on is the bit that's like the handle and then the crosspiece. From the hilt to the point. It was massive, stretching from one end of the table to the other. I had expected it to be encrusted with age, but it wasn't. It was smooth all along the length of the blade, except where it was engraved. I could feel the patterns. I found the hilt and grabbed it. The moment I did so, my darkness exploded into sudden light that vanished at once and left millions of fiery sparks whirling about inside my head. I tried to let go of the sword, but I couldn't. It was as if my hand was glued to the hilt, stuck fast. I could hear my mother's voice from far away saying, and to think that's been lying down there all under our potatoes all these years, and it's still so well preserved. It's wonderful, just wonderful. Look at the blade. You can still see the engraving. My hand was suddenly released. I dropped the sword and staggering back, clutching my hand. What's the matter, Bun? You've gone quite pale. Are you all right? My mother asked. I couldn't answer. I felt stunned, breathless, unable to speak. You just wait till you see the shield, my father was saying. I'll have to unwrap it. I wrapped them both in corn sacks, Bun, so no one would see. We don't want some nosy Parker finding out about it, do we? Stand back a bit. I heard the newspaper shifting as he laid the shield down on the table. Will you look at that? Said my mother. It's massive. How could they possibly hold a thing like that and fight at the same time? Looks like bronze, if you ask me. Bronze and leather. Amazing. Just amazing. And there are marks on it. Bun. Cuts, slashes, battle scars, I shouldn't wonder. Here, Bun. This time it was my father who took my hand to guide it to the table, but I pulled my hand free of him. What's the matter? He said. I don't want to touch it, I said, backing away. I just don't want to, that's all. Outside in the night, the Bishop Rock Lighthouse sounded its horn, as if it was both warning me and beckoning me at the same time. I felt shivery all over. Chapter 11. No such thing as luck. All that evening, I kept wondering what great chieftain might have once owned the sword and the shield. What battles had he fought in? What knights had he killed? How had he died? They took photographs of the sword and shield lying side by side on the kitchen table, then one with me in the picture standing over them, and another on the timer, all three of us together, arms round each other and laughing. All the while I could still see sparks inside my head. I'd felt an awesome power in that sword, and although it fascinated me, it frightened me more. Yet still I found myself tempted to try again, to reach out and touch it. But in the end, I just couldn't do it. I'll put them back first thing in the morning, then I'll call the archaeology people at the duchy offices, my father was saying. I expect they'll send someone at once to take them away and investigate the site. So we'd better make the best of them while we've got them. All through a supper of toasted cheese and mustard sandwiches, my favourite, we talked about how extraordinary it was, about how lucky we'd been, that it had happened on our farm, that we had found them. Then my mother said something very strange. There's no such thing as luck, Bun. Everything's meant. And I said, even my diving off the quay that day and hitting my head? Yes, she replied, maybe even that. Afterwards, my mother drew sketches of the sword and the shield just in case the film didn't come out. She said, we stayed up half the night. None of us could bring ourselves to go to bed. It was as if the sword and the shield held us in some magical thrall from which we didn't want to escape. When at last we all trooped upstairs, leaving the sword and the shield on the kitchen table, I could not resist one last look back. Of course, I could see nothing, but quite suddenly the sparks in my head had stopped whirling and were replaced by a pulsating glow that suffused first my head, then my whole body with a wonderful warmth. I shuddered at the pleasure of it. My mother must have felt it too, for she put her arm round me to comfort me as we went upstairs. It's all right, Bun, she said. There's nothing to be frightened of, you know. I'm not frightened, Mum, I told her, and it was true. All my fear of the sword had vanished and was replaced now by a deep longing, a need almost, to be near it again, and not just to touch it, but to take it, to hold it, to own it, if only for a moment. As I felt my way along the wall to my bedroom, running my knuckles over the familiar wood-chip wallpaper, it came to me that I could, and I would, do exactly that. I would wait till they'd gone to sleep and go back down the stairs and hold the sword in my hand. And remember, Bun, my father went on after he'd said goodnight, not a word to a soul. All we did was find them in the potato field, but we never had them in the house, right? I heard my mother still fretting as they went into their room. But I still say you shouldn't have brought them inside like that. What if anyone finds out? They won't, my father replied. No one saw me. Bun won't say anything, and neither will we. What do you think they're going to do? Look for fingerprints? What could possibly go wrong? Once I've put them back in the tomb in the morning, they'll just find them there, and that'll be that. The place is a mess anyway, full of stones and fallen soil. They'll never know anything different. You worry too much. Just enjoy it. Just think of it. 1,500 years old, maybe, and we were the very first people to see that sword after all that time. And sometime later, I heard my mother say, do you know what I wish? I wish Bun could have seen it. Maybe he did, said my father, in his own way. I mean, that boy's got a terrific imagination. Don't know where he gets it from, not his father's side, that's for sure, quipped my mother. Quipped means joked. Thanks, he replied, and then they were both laughing. I lay there in bed, hearing but no longer listening to their muffled talk. The warming glow in my head was still there, like the darkness I was so used to. I couldn't see through it, but it was so much better, so much easier to live with than the endless blackness. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that the glow in my head had come from the power of that sword, just as the sparks had before it. They talked on much longer than they usually did. I knew I must wait until they were asleep, and fast asleep too. But I was having trouble keeping awake. I kept drifting off, and then bringing myself back from the brink of sleep. I heard the Bishop Rock foghorn sounding outside again, and thought of the fog swirling in over Annet and St Agnes, rolling over the sea towards Briar. I liked fog. It blinded everyone and put me on equal terms with the rest of the world. That was why I liked my dreaming too. In my dreams, I was like everyone else. I could see again just as I had before. The whole world of my dreams was vivid and bright and coloured, full of the faces and places I knew and loved so well. I could see oyster catchers and gannets and turnstones and watch the Briar gig racing down the Tresco Channel. I could see the sun setting over the sea, watch the seals basking on the Eastern Isles. But tonight, I didn't want to sleep, did not want to dream. I fought back the heaviness that was coming over me. I heard the foghorn sound once more, and then there was silence. I couldn't help myself. I had to sleep. I would go into my dreams.